Hi, Cole here. Today I have a super fun group graphing activity for third graders to share with you. This is drawn from a session that I did earlier this week with 7 third grade classes, which amounted to about 170 third graders. It's a super fun assembly, though I will say you don't need that big of a group to do this. A class would be great. Started out by getting all of the classes into the gymnasium and seated on the floor. Then I read my children's book, Daphne Draws Data, a storytelling with data adventure. As I was reading, I projected the illustrations onto the big screen. And part of the great fun is putting up Daphne's graphs and explaining them before she gets to her answer. So the kids can look at the graphs and answer the questions for themselves. And they're so excited to do this. So we read the book. We talked a little bit about some of the graphs that Daphne drew. We focused specifically on bar charts and pie charts because the activity that we then proceeded with had to do with some survey data. And the survey was actually one that we gave to the third graders ahead of time, just 3 simple questions about things that matter to them. And I think we'll do another short video on designing surveys for little ones because there is an art to it. But more important than having the perfect survey is making it something meaningful and exciting and ideally actionable as well for the kids. On the survey that they filled out, there were 3 questions. There was one about school start time. So this is an elementary school that has a start time on the later side. So they asked kids if they would prefer to keep the school starting at the current time, if they would like to start a little earlier and end a little earlier, or if they'd like to start a lot earlier and end a lot earlier. They had specific times associated with each of these. Their second question asked, where is the best spot on the playground to make new friends, with several options to choose from there. And then the final survey item was about adding a new vegetarian item to the hot lunch menu. And it asked which of several options students would enjoy most. We divided the kids up into groups. In our case, each group had about 10 kids in it, but this would work for anywhere from 3 or 4 kids to 10 or maybe even 12 on the high end. Now, it is important that you have someone to be able to guide the group. This could be parent volunteers or teachers. In our case, the school district I was in has a fantastic program at the high school level where students can get exposure and practice in a potential career track. On this day, I was working with the future teachers track. So each group had 1 or 2 future teachers in the form of high school students helping guide them. And I put the instructions up on the big screen for the groups to follow. 5 simple steps. First step, decide which question they wanted to answer, and then write that at the top of their paper as the title. The second step was to decide what sort of graph the group wanted to use. We limited them in this case to bar charts or pie charts. Next step was to draw the data. I'd given the future teachers some instructions ahead of time so they knew how to do this. Step 4, after drawing the data, is to use the data to answer the question. Step 5 was simply to have fun. Encourage the kids to take part by drawing and adding elements, coloring, adding pictures if they so desired. For me, it was incredibly fun just to walk around and talk to the different groups and see the data drawings that they were making over the course of really just 15 minutes or so. Every single group had a graph that they could use to answer their question. And we brought everyone back together and did a little debrief from there, talked about the different surveys and what we learned and how those findings can be put into practice. Then we had some Q&A about the book and the writing process and graphs and data in general. In all, this took about 45 minutes, which of course could be scaled down if you trim some of these pieces, but it made a super fun activity that showed kids the value of using data, collecting numbers, drawing those numbers in a graph, and how you can do that in a way that allows you to answer your questions or questions that you may have about the world around you. This is a superpower for kids. And I think that third graders walked away that day really feeling empowered. This is really paving the path in terms of what I've seen schools do around Daphne and graphing activities to date. And so I really hope that others will model this amazing approach. If you do, I'd love to have you share a comment below. Also, feel free to ask any questions. I know I've gone through this quickly. So if you have questions about any of it or related resources that would be useful, definitely leave a comment with your thoughts and we'll make sure to address those. I'll point your attention before we close to daphnedrawsdata.com, where you will find a ton of resources, activities for kids, support for parents, and resources for educators. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.